Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Eczema Podcast. Today I had a really great guest on the show who talks all about probiotics, the truth about probiotics, secrets about probiotics, things like why anyone can just make a probiotic and package it and sell it on the shelf without much FDA regulation, why it's important to also look for probiotics that have specifically been studied on the skin, and why purchasing those ones are the most important. And even things like what to look for in a probiotic, whether it can help the skin, and also the optimal amount of time you should be taking probiotics for. For example, for his products, my guest products, he has the probiotics and he actually recommends taking it for at least 45 to 60 days just to notice a difference. But 90 days is actually the optimal amount of time. So if you think about it, a lot of us give up on taking probiotics on the first week or maybe even the first days because we don't notice much difference. So we talk all about that in today's episode, along with fillers that go in probiotics too, and how probiotics can help your skin. So I'm really excited for today's episode and for you to learn more about it as well. If you're ever interested in learning more about probiotics, my guest today also has a free ebook for you guys as a gift, and it's free. You can access it at skinessa.com. That is SKINESA.com/Abby Podcast. And you can get his free ebook there, along with plenty of great charts and graphs all about probiotics to give you a deeper dive into how it can affect the skin. So you can grab it at skinessa.com/Abby Podcast. Also, I just want to share a quick promo code as well for my Conqueror Dry Skin Balm and my Conqueror Bath Treatment. If you're ever interested in trying any of those products, which are all natural products with no harsh ingredients and no harsh preservatives in it, you can always use the code podcast10, and that's podcast10 to get 10% off. So just head to eczemaconquerors.com. That's Eczema Conquerors with an S, and head to the shop section and you can use that code on any item in the store. So without further ado, here's today's podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Eczema Podcast, where you'll learn tips, products, and natural eczema remedies from Abby, registered holistic nutritionist and founder of eczemaconquerors.com. Stay tuned as she invites experts in the field. Here's your host of the Eczema Podcast, Abby.
So hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Eczema Podcast. Today I have a really cool guest who I actually met at the Eczema Expo last month. And while we were talking, he actually gave me a lot of great information that I've never heard about, all about probiotics, the gut, and the gut microbiome. And I thought it would be such a great idea to bring him here and just to talk to you guys to see and to learn more about what he has learned and all the knowledge that he has, because it's super fascinating. So I just want to introduce you to my guest, Eric. And he is a co-founder of Skinessa Probiotics, which I believe is the first probiotic that has ever had a clinical trial for eczema patients. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I would love to hear more about your story and how you got into this.
Yes, our probiotic product contains the first blend that has ever been studied on atopic dermatitis, and that has been published into an American medical journal, or an American dermatology journal to be exact. So the ingredients in our product have been studied.
That's so great. And can you tell me how you got into all of this and more about, your background and what made you decide to come up with a probiotic specifically for eczema?
Okay, so this is a long story. So I'm from Wisconsin originally, and I grew up in Wisconsin allergic to dairy. So I don't know if you're familiar with Wisconsin, but it's America's dairy land.
Oh, wow.
So that was a real treat, growing up in Wisconsin, allergic to dairy. and not really knowing it. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I drank some skim milk with some cereal, and I ended up exploding into hives. So it was like my first experience, like with the gut skin axis, as they're calling it now. And I was like, wow, okay, so I guess I can't have skim milk anymore. I just need to stay away from that. And like in the early 80s, back in my day, in the early 80s, people didn't have like a lot of these allergies. It wasn't as much as it is today. And so basically for 20 years or so, I was just poisoning myself every day with dairy, and butter was like my favorite thing to eat. And sometimes it would come up, and I would get I would always have like a stuffy nose and a sore throat, and it would just be problematic for a long time. So the way that's relevant, that background story, is because my daughter also has a dairy allergy. And, she had an ambulance ride. It's very scary. You can have anaphylactic shock, and, you have to go to the hospital. You could die. So that's the sort of allergy that we have. And my son does not have a dairy allergy for one reason or another. We don't know exactly why. But one of the things that was interesting to me is that I read a study in 2015 at the University of Chicago, Catherine Nagler, and also Naples, Italy. I think it was a combined study where they discovered that this bacteria, this probiotic, reverses cow's milk allergy in infants. Like a probiotic reverses cow's milk allergy in infants. I was like, wow, that's incredible. I was like reading my science. And so I noticed that this probiotic in this study, LGG, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, GG, was in my son's formula. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So my son doesn't have a dairy allergy, and he's getting this probiotic blend that reverses cow's milk allergy. Did this somehow help maybe him not develop this allergy? I was like, I wonder if that could work for me. So like I went online, and I just, like as a normal consumer would do, I tried ordering some of this LGG because I wasn't going to, take any of my son's formula. It's like $50 a carton or whatever. It's expensive. So I ordered some Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which is like the species that's in there. And I just started, taking some probiotics, and to help with my digestion, maybe to see if I could, introduce dairy again, because who doesn't love pizza, butter, all that stuff? And I'm exposed like all the time. And sometimes it feels if I have too much, like I'm having a heart attack. It's really terrifying. But so I was like, okay, let me test this. These probiotics are amazing, right? Maybe this could help me like have a slice of pizza once a month or something. And like miraculously, my chronic skin condition that I've had for like 20 years, I never really knew what it was. If it was like eczema, psoriasis, it was just there. I just stopped managing it. It was just, wasn't something that I was too concerned on. It was just like, itchy and kind of annoying and didn't look great. I didn't want to flash my elbow when I was in public, or my knee or my ankle. Anyway, I started taking these probiotics, this Lactobacillus rhamnosus specifically, the species, and it cleared up my skin condition in 4 days.
That's amazing.
Like gone. Like I was just like getting ready one morning, and usually I put a bunch of extra lotion on there to like get rid of it, make it look better. And I went down and I was like, that's bizarre. It's gone. And then on my knee, and then on my ankle too. I was like, what's going on? This is crazy. So I like went online and was like, is this really something that this has to be like a coincidence or something that I took this probiotic and it cleared up my skin? So I started investigating and, looking online. One of the studies that I came across is this one here that I can share with you. I don't know if you can see this. So this is a woman in India who had pustular psoriasis responding to probiotics. So this was a few years ago. This was like 2012. And this was just like a case study. This was just one person. And you can see like how dramatic the difference was there, right?
Wow,
so
yeah.
It's like really incredible. And all she took was a lactobacillus. And I was like,
that's amazing.
Interesting. So why don't I order some of this? So I, started investigating and like, maybe I could take some of this, species too. So then I started investigating and like, I didn't really understand like the difference between species and strain. And when I started investigating this Lactobacillus rhamnosus, I came across a paper that investigated 100 different Lactobacillus rhamnosus strains against Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG. So I discovered that there's hundreds of different strains of Lactobacillus rhamnosus. So it turned out that I didn't order LGG, the most studied probiotic in the world, has over 1,100 studies behind it. I ordered just a generic species, Lactobacillus rhamnosus online. And that was the one that cleared up my elbow and my knee and my ankle. I was like, this is really interesting. I didn't really know that there was hundreds of different probiotic strains per species. And, one way that I was illustrating this at the show is, one example is E. coli. E. coli is a probiotic. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Right. And like when you hear E. coli, it's like, E. coli is like, gets you sick when, gets in your salad or something. It's like, ugh. But the difference between species and strain is there's a strain of E. coli called E. coli Nissel 1917, which they discovered in World War I in the trenches, that one of the soldiers didn't get the Shigella outbreak. So there was a scientist that discovered that this specific strain of E. coli that he had in his gut protected him. So this Dr. Nissel was able to go and sequence this strain and grow it in a dish and hand it out to the soldiers. So it was like a probiotic. So it protected them against the Shigella. So now the E. coli is a probiotic.
That's very cool and very, very interesting, actually.
Right. So like when you go like shopping for probiotics, like you go to the store and you'll see like, you just pick up a bottle and you'll see Lactobacillus rhamnosus, Lactobacillus acidophilus, whatever they are. I can see 10 of them. But if there's no strain identified there, well, what is that? What are you getting? You don't even know. So I wanted to share this with other people. That was the goal. So I shared it with my dad, and I shared it with like a neighbor and a couple other people. And my neighbor was like, wow, it worked for me too. I was like, what? And I said it to my dad. My dad's like, no, this didn't work for me. And my dad, I was like, oh, just give it time. Maybe it takes time. He was like 30, 45 days, and it didn't really work for him. So I'm just like a case study. This isn't something that, you can just, hey, I discovered this. I'm going to share it with the world, and it's going to work for everybody. So it doesn't really work that way. But that was my idea, is like, what if I just put together like a blend of like all these all-star probiotics strains, right? And put them in a bottle and share them with people. And surely this synergy of all these all-star strains could probably help people, right? So that was my thought process. And we went to a manufacturer to put this like probiotic all-star blend together. And I started investigating, and I found this bottle that had like 30 billion in it, and it had all these amazing species in there. Maybe like 12 of them that you were like, oh, these are great. Surely all of these in one bottle are going to help people, with their skin. So I went to their factory and actually like walked on the floor and like discussed with them, like, I want more information. Like, what's going on in here? Like, what are the strains? Can you see the strains that are in here? And so he started telling me, I was like, what's the breakdown? I just started asking a lot of questions because I'm like curious, like what exactly is in this bottle? And so he was like, well, it's 30 billion. I'm like, well, how much do the lactobacillus have? How much do the bifidobacteria, per strain? Can you tell me that breakdown? And he was like, well, to be honest with you, it's 30 billion total, but it's really 29 billion of the bacillus. And the bacillus, I learned, is like a spore former that's in the ground. And these spore formers can live for like 50 million years. Wow. Scientists are finding these organisms in the ground that just like live in a state of like, ready to animate when they get into the right environment. And, so they can be like 30 million, a shelf life, so to say, for like a million years. So you can put it in the bottle, I'm exaggerating, but you can put it in a bottle and it's, it has a infinite shelf life. So that's what they do in the probiotics industry. They'll put this like a bacillus genus in there, and that will be like the whole product. So the rest of it, he said, oh, that's just really window dressing.
So kind of like marketing.
Kind of like exactly like marketing, which is exactly what the 30 billion is too, right? Because like we started off with like 10 billion. And like, okay, that's good. 20 billion. Oh, 30 billion. Well, what's better than 30 billion?
40.
Well, 40 billion. And then 50 billion, 60 billion, 90 billion. And I even went out and took a 90 billion to test because I'm like the same. I'm like, surely a 90 billion is going to work better than, the 10 billion that I tried or whatever. So that was interesting on the bacillus. So that was it. So that was basically like the death of my idea. Like, I was like, I'm not going to be able to share this with anybody because this is like deception, right? Like, where am I going to go from here? So we had to hire, an advisor, to help us because like we're onto something, obviously, right? Like something is happening here because I tried it a few times. I tried probiotics and my skin would clear up. I did it like 3 or 4 times, and every time it worked on me, a case study. So it was really fascinating. So I wanted to learn more, right? So I took this 90 billion product, right? Say, this is happening in 4 days for me, a case study. And what if I did 90 billion? What else is going to, be great for me? Maybe I'll have, even better skin or whatever. So I tried this 90 billion and it had like the reverse effect. I had like a breakout. So, and I don't know what the cause was. Maybe it was that, maybe it wasn't, but I took this 90 billion just testing on myself. I was testing a lot of different things and that had a really bad effect. And maybe it was too much or maybe what I was eating at the time or whatever. But as luck would have it, that weekend, I decided to go to the Microbiome drug conference, which was in Boston. And I went there with my skin flared up. So I went there and I talked to this scientist there by the name of Dr. Rita Caldwell. She's at the University of Maryland. And she's won presidential citations, scientific awards. She's like an expert. And I showed her my skin and I was like, Rita, this is crazy. Like, do you see this? I can clear this up in 4 days with a probiotic. I've done it a few times. What do you think this is? And she was like, there's no way to tell just by looking at your skin. But she's like, it looks like, Staph aureus, but you could test it to find out. She's like, and we have a company called Cosmos ID, which can metagenomically sequence your skin and your gut to see what the balance looks like, what you have in there. Viruses, fungi, bacteria.
Which is super cool. That's like everything.
Yeah, everything. So, and I had taken part in the American Gut Project as well. So the American Gut Project is like a 16S sequencing. They kind of give you like a genus overview so you can see like kind of what your overall gut profile is. But this Cosmos ID sequencing, that is like everything. It's down to the strain. I can see, viruses and fungi and protists and bacteria all the way down to the strain. So I can see every, what comes, in the fecal matter. They can test and see, how many bacteria are in there to the strain. So I had like 350 different bacteria strains, in my gut. And they also did my skin, which had like 225 different strains. So I was able to do the before and after probiotics while I was there for 4 days and, and see the results. Now, the thing with Cosmos ID is they don't tell you they don't read the results for you. They're like a scientist. So it's like, here's the results. These are amazing results, as fine as you can get. But we're not going to tell you that, oh, you need to eat more bananas and you got a potassium deficiency and your vitamin D looks low, which is like what a lot of these other places do based on the 16S sequencing, which is less visible. It doesn't have like as much read on them. But they will tell you like all these things that you should do when the science really isn't there. Like you'll read some of these reports, based on 16S sequencing that, you need to eat more, foods with, vitamin D or whatever. and or you're low in bifidobacteria. And it's like, no, you don't know that. You have no idea what that is. So, and nobody knows. The consumer doesn't know that. So it's basically just fluff. And I'm not saying that for every company, but like a lot of them out there, it's like you get your sequencing done and it's fluff. They're kind of telling you what you should do. And it's just like, we're in the Stone Age right now, as far as like the gut microbiome, the skin microbiome. Because like when you go to the doctor in the future, you're going to go and get your gut sequence and your skin sequence. You're going to be able to see exactly what's happening. And you say, okay, your gut is out of balance. You need to eat more dietary fiber and maybe take this probiotic, specifically designed for your issue. And, you have a Staph aureus infection, and we need to treat that as well topically. And, we'll be a little bit more advanced. And you'll be able to do that, for on the cheap. Right now it's like $400
wow, that's a lot.
For the gut and for the elbow.
400 each, or like both?
Yeah, between like 250 and like 400. It can be expensive, but that's coming down. So in the future, you're going to be able to do this on your iPhone, technically. So you're going to be able to see your microbial ecosystem like on a daily basis. You'll be able to test and go, oh yeah, I am just loaded with Staph aureus. And it turned out that I didn't have Staph aureus, by the way. I had something else. I had a bunch of staph, but I didn't know, which species or strain it was. It's just unknown. So for me, that it wasn't it, but it was something similar to that. Anyway, so yeah, in the future, you're going to be able to tell that, what you have, and you're going to be able to balance it out, I think, better than we can now, because we're just kind of like shooting in the dark right now. We don't really know. But so while I was in Boston, the thing that was so interesting to me is that I met with Dr. Alicio Fasano and Dr. Rita Caldwell, and they had like a lecture that I attended. And, this is where I really learned about the gut microbiome and the skin microbiome. And I think you read the ebook, right?
Yeah, I saw it. I saw parts of it. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I learned there that, we have 39 trillion microbes, the gut microbiota. And they're describing it as like a newly discovered organ, in your gut. And this newly discovered organ, 39 trillion microbes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's half. You're half microbial. That's you. And then you're like 34 trillion human cells. So you're a little more microbial than you are human cells, which is pretty fascinating. And this gut microbiome, that includes, almost, 2 million, hold on a second. You gotta get a drink of water here.
Yep, no problem.
2 million genes, 2 to 20 million genes, where the human, we have 23,000 genes almost. So this gut microbiome has, 2 to 20 million genes. So like 150 times the genetic information that you have. And they just discovered it.
Wow.
They're like, what does it do? And they're just kind of figuring it out, how important it is. And that it's like a vital organ, like as vital as the kidneys or the liver, they're saying. So I thought that was really mind-blowing. And then I was like, okay. Then he started explaining, chronic diseases are doubling every 15 years. And like all of these, chronic issues are doubling. And, genetic diseases, can't grow exponentially. Like a layperson even can understand that, right? So it's like, it's something in the environment. The environment is causing this problem. And one of the charts that he had that really blew me away was the autism chart from the CDC. And that's raising exponentially. And he said that, when less than 15 years, 1 in 4 boys will have autism based on this chart, because more boys than girls have it. So it's skewed a little bit towards boys. So 1 in 4 boys. And that goes with like a lot of these chronic conditions, like, MS and Crohn's and type 1 diabetes and like, all these, and like eczema, atopic dermatitis and autoimmune disorders, and psoriasis. So I was like, oh, wow, this is really crazy. This is like not good news. And they even, he himself even mentioned that we should do like a Manhattan style project to tackle this. One of the main things that they're looking at, it's multifactorial. There's lots of different, C-sections, whether or not you were breastfed, dietary fiber intake, poisons in the environment. But dietary fiber is the one that he really touched on. He's a gastroenterologist who discovered zonulin. So this dietary fiber, it's shown in one study that Americans are 97% short. Like 97% of Americans don't eat enough dietary fiber, and that's by a 50% shortfall. So that's everybody in the United States not eating enough dietary fiber, and that's fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. And I say that like we should start eating those. Try to find the ones that agree with your system, right? And so the Institute of Medicine, which is a nonprofit group, they recommend 38 grams a day for men, 25 grams a day for women. Like, do you know how much fiber you get a day right now, do you think?
Well, I know for me, like I'm predominantly eating fruits and vegetables, so I'm getting like a lot. But I remember seeing your chart, like so many people are not getting enough, and it's crazy how it affects the microbiome.
Yeah, and you even saw, I think I shared that study with you, is like Asian immigrants coming here, and this was a study by Dan Knights and his team. They came over and they studied the Asian immigrants over 2 generations, and what they found is that when they moved here from Southeast Asia, they lost gut microbiome diversity, eating the Western diet. When in Southeast Asia, they had more dietary fiber. And what that means for their gut enterotype, their gut microbiome profile, is that, when they came over here, they had Prevotella heavy, like Prevotella was their gut microbiome profile. And when they moved over here, it kind of changed to Bacteroides. And scientists now, they're kind of putting all humans as a really broad general categories into 2 enterotypes, and that's Prevotella and Bacteroides. So you're like basically in one of those 2 groups. And, Bacteroides can be associated with colon cancer in African Americans versus Africans, when they immigrate to the United States, they're Prevotella in Africa. They don't have the same colon cancer as they do here in the United States. When they move here, they become more Bacteroides. So back to the Asian immigrants, the same thing happened with them. They were Prevotella heavy when they came over, and then they changed more to Bacteroides, and they lost a lot of the gut microbiome diversity, and they became obese and ill. And yes. So that's kind of a scary thing. So when I did my sequencing, I discovered that I fit into the Prevotella group. And like lo and behold, when I had my flare-up, I had Bacteroides flare-up. And then when I took probiotics, it balanced out from my observations, and I became Prevotella again. So I'm like in this Prevotella group, which is kind of interesting. And I was even able to reference back, because I was part of the American Gut Project as well, because your gut microbiome like changes like daily. It can change every 4 days. Like I was just 4 days, and I saw myself change from Bacteroides kind of coming up to Prevotella heavy.
Just because of your diet, right? In 4 days.
Just because of diet and probiotics. Yeah, exactly. So, which is interesting because, like I said, I didn't know if I have, I thought I had eczema. I don't think that I do. I was never like diagnosed. So my wife was like, oh, you've got eczema. So like this whole time I thought I had eczema, right? So that's what I was looking at. So there was this study that came out just last year, 2018, that showed, my dad has psoriasis. They have these patients that have psoriasis, they have this Prevotella enterotype. And then there's a subcategory of this Prevotella enterotype of the psoriasis sufferers. 71% of them are more prone to bacterial translocation. So I was like, whoa, it seems like I fit right into that based on my own observations. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So, I guess that means that the, bacterial translocation through more gut permeability. So if I'm like on the Western diet and I want to go out and party on the weekend and have like a bunch of drinks and eat steaks, have a cigar, smoke some cigarettes, whatever it might be, I'm going to invite that monster back. So based on what I'm seeing here, and I'm more prone than other people. So like this other group might be affected the same way as I am if I fit into this, 71% profile where my gut microbiome is out of balance. So I need to like keep it balanced every day and try to keep it in that so I can keep my gut barrier, protected. Because I don't know if you read the ebook, but the gut barrier is only one cell layer thick. And I also learned this in Boston. One cell layer thick.
It's not that thick.
That's not that thick, right? So like people say like, what is it? Guts, gut permeability is, is what I learned in Boston is one of the 5 pillars of chronic inflammation. So, that's something that you want to try to manage daily. And, you're basically like a 25-foot tube, one cell layer thick. So if you're talking about gut permeability, I mean, that's really kind of what you're looking at. I mean, you can see that it's very thin and you have like a mucus layer that covers it. And that's where a lot of these beneficial bacteria reside and, keep your a healthy gut wall. And the key to keeping that balance is what they're finding is dietary fiber, eating enough fruits and vegetables that are good for your system. And when they look back at the historical record, there's a scientist who wrote a book called The Good Gut, Erica and Justin Sonnenberg. And they have a really incredible study that came out looking at the historical data of gut microbiome diversity. And they kind of showed the same thing that Dan Knights found in his, Asian immigrant study, where, if you go back looking at these groups like, 65,000 years ago when we left Africa, we had, 100% of our gut microbiome diversity going. And the same people are still living there in Tanzania, the Hadza, and they get 100 grams of dietary fiber a day. And they also eat tons of sugar and tons of meat. And, they walk like 15 miles a day and like all this stuff. But from like 6 months old, they get like 100 grams of dietary fiber. Their transition to food is like eating these tubers where they're getting tons of fiber. So if you look at the chart, I can share these links with you. But if you look at the chart, it's like they're at 100% of the human gut microbiome. Like, when we left Africa, they're still there living in the same spot. Where now, based on results from the American Gut Project, we can see that we've lost. So we're down to like 30%. So they're saying that what the evidence shows is that a lack of dietary fiber over the course of generations has your gut microbes going extinct.
Wow,
so they're not coming back. So if you're at 100, so that's not coming back. So like a lot of times you're born over here, maybe you're born at like this 30%. But then for one reason or another, all these stressors, like, my children, for medical reasons, had to have a C-section. And, there's studies that are coming out now that, 30%, the rates of C-section are skyrocketing. They're not always medical necessary. But what the evidence is showing is that you're seeded, during the birth canal. That's where you get a lot of these beneficial microbes. And you're also getting them fed through your mother's breast milk. So if you're not, it's just a risk factor, right? So if you don't have, if you're born by C-section, maybe you're missing some of these microbes. And then if you're, for one reason or another, you're not able to breastfeed, then you're losing both of those. So then it's like a double factor. So the microbes that you should have got in the birth canal, you didn't get. And you're not feeding them because of, the breastfeeding. You're not able to breastfeed for one reason or another medically. So it's just like a risk factor. So, my daughter has asthma, which is like, well, maybe is that part of it? Maybe. But, if you look at the rates of asthma, they're going up exponentially, just like the rates of a lot of these other things. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if asthma is going. Yes, I do know, actually. Asthma is going up exponentially. I just want to make sure I say the right thing, because I do remember seeing that when I was investigating my daughter's asthma. So what I'm trying to get at is like all these risk factors are like putting us at risk for, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's like a challenge, when we're at that. So what they're saying is that we really need to eat more dietary fiber.
So what are your thoughts on, like diets like, like keto diet or paleo diet, where they also do have like heavy meats? Like, does it matter if they have heavy meats, or is the focus basically, they can eat those things as long as they also get a lot of dietary fiber?
Right. The second part of that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because, and I'm not an expert on diets, that's for sure. But from what I understand, this lack of dietary fiber is causing, extinction with all these other stressors in the gut microbiome. So it's pretty scary when you see now. So right now, Americans are at 15 grams of dietary fiber a day, like on average. So now they're saying, oh, what about these like, a diet where it's all meat, so then you're not getting any fiber at all. Well, now what's going to happen to that gut microbiome? And it's like, woof, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these, studies are showing that, the gut microbiome is a central player in these, the five pillars of chronic inflammation. So, which are, by the way, the gut microbiome, your immune system, 80% of it, which is in your gut, gut permeability, your environment, and then genetics. So like, there's your like cause. Like that's what we're looking at based on what Alessio Fasano told me is like his leading hypothesis is those 5 factors are kind of what you're looking at, every day. And the main thing that keeps popping up is this lack of dietary fiber. And another guy who studied, there's just so much information to cover. There's another gentleman by the name of Jeff Leach, and he's a PhD scientist who studies the Hadza. And I know you had on your program last week, what was her name? Jennifer Fugo?
Oh, Jennifer, was it Fugo? Or I had another Jennifer too, Papa Constantino. Was it about antibiotics?
Yeah, no, I think it was about an acidic environment.
Oh, low stomach acid?
Low stomach acid.
Yeah, that's with Jennifer Fugo, yeah.
So is that part of like atopic dermatitis? Is low stomach?
Yeah. So low stomach acid would affect, can affect the skin too.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that Jeff Leach was saying is like, if you're not getting like enough dietary fiber, that's kind of what happens. You have like this environment where these like bad bacteria can flourish. And so, yeah, that's like a less acidic environment. So you want to get these, dietary fiber gives you like these short chain fatty acids, and it produces butyrate. That's the same thing. So it's producing these, beneficial, processes that, can benefit like your whole overall health.
That's very interesting. So can people take a probiotic, like you mentioned, to help their skin get balanced without taking enough fiber? I mean, people should still be taking enough fiber, but can they do that?
Yeah, technically you could try that, sure. But as an overall idea, I just think that, learning what I've learned is that you want to do it hand in hand. You want to make sure that you're getting enough fruits and vegetables that agree with your system specifically. And then, supplement with probiotics that are based in science. So, probiotics by definition, they really must have a scientifically demonstrated health effect. So they need to be like published in a scientific journal, in order really to be classified as probiotics. So like when you go to the store, and you see like all these probiotics, maybe that describes 1 in 500 of the probiotics on the shelf, right? So like you look at the back of the bottle and it's just the species. Well, what strain is that? How do you look that up? You can't even Google that. Is that in any scientific literature? Who knows? It might be, it might not be. What's the strain? So like if you Google Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, you're going to see, 1,100 studies, all sorts of magical benefits. It's like a great probiotic. That's like the definition of a probiotic. So when you're choosing a probiotic specifically for the skin, you want to see if it has any, demonstrated health results, in a clinical study, peer reviewed. So, you can take it with confidence.
So it does sound like, with every probiotic you buy, you should do the research and see if there have been studies to prove that it actually works, so that that you're getting your money's worth.
Because by definition, that's what a probiotic is. But they're labeling everything probiotic now. Even the creams are being labeled probiotic. But they're not probiotics, because probiotics by definition are live microorganisms.
And yeah, the interesting thing, so I remember when we were talking in person, I was looking at your ingredients for your probiotics, and beside the species, it has like the like brackets, like, and then a code. So is that the strain that you're referring to? Yeah. Like a good probiotic would have that strain that you can look up.
Right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. And the way to do that is Google Scholar. There's some other places. On our website, if you go to skinessa.com/research, you can get access to our digital vault where we have like all those journals and you can read them for yourself.
And I think maybe you can touch a little bit about, I think when we talked last time, you mentioned that pretty much like anyone can just make a probiotic, and if there's no FDA regulation, and then they can put it on a shelf and sell it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So probiotic species in general are very safe. So that's why there's really no, oversight until somebody gets hurt. So they've been out there for many years. And generally speaking, they have some great, digestive, you get some great results from it. So overall, people love them and people are crazy for them. So, and they do work. That's the general consensus. But you get that situation, like I explained earlier, where it was like, what are you getting though? It might not be nothing. It might not be anything in there, but there's some good ones out there that are, if you follow the definition of probiotics, those are the ones to get. Get those strains that have been published in the scientific journal. If you want better digestion, look up, that would probably be LGG. That's a really good one for balance. You just want balance your gut microbiome. But I probably should kind of tie this all together of how I ended up working with Skinessa, like how we kind of started that. So to back up my story a little bit, so I was kind of at a dead end. I wanted to share this discovery with the world, right? And so we needed a scientific advisor. And so as luck would have it, my friend out in San Francisco, his professor's mentor is a world-renowned scientist. And he was able to research with us. We kind of share with him like all these studies that we were looking at. It's like, look at all these, species. We want to make an all-star bottle. I showed him my elbow and my ankle, my knee. Is like, is there a way we can share this? This is magical. And so he was able to connect us, with the team of scientists that was able to, that have been working on this for the last 10 years. And kind of finding the same thing that I found by accident. And kind of like how I explained earlier, like I fell into right into one of their studies, with the enterotype. So, they kind of found the same thing, that these specific probiotic strains, specifically when they're able to be combined together have a synergistic effect where you're balancing the gut microbiome, you're helping the barrier, the gut permeability, the functioning there, and actions on the immune system, and kind of working together, where the end result is an action on the skin. And so then they're able to discover it, then, test it, and then, test it in dermatology clinics in patients where, in the clinical trial that was published in the American Dermatology Journal, they had 23 participants and they took a probiotic once daily. And at the end of 90 days, 21 out of 23 patients had clear or almost clear skin. So it was like really spectacular finding. So that's who we were able to connect up with. So I was like kind of like a good spokesperson for that, because I kind of experienced firsthand, with my own little experience on a case study. But they've been working on it. The experts have been working on it for over a decade, because it takes a long time to put all this together. And, back to my earlier example too of, having this like bacillus and a thing where it has a shelf life forever. But probiotics are very difficult, to produce and get done correctly. It takes a long time, lots of third-party testing. You got to make sure that all of the, strains have the correct CFUs. And really experts have to, put all this together. And, you get lots of roadblocks to make sure everything is done correctly.
Yeah, so, and I think you mentioned that it took you 6 years to put your probiotic together.
No, this took over a decade.
Oh, yeah, this one even for your specific probiotic.
No, so for mine, I've been working on it for a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it's still
not that long. Yeah, a year and a half was a long time, for me to be doing that, and we just started selling them, so it's kind of new to the market. We're very excited about it. I'm really grateful that, we're able to team up with this, team of scientists that have been working on it for so long, that they're going to be able to help people. I'm really excited for that. And it's just, it doesn't work, I have like a little case study that works so well, but I think I showed you like the graphs, the evidence shows that it takes a little time, it's like 45 days, you start seeing, okay, something's happening here. Like the gut microbiome is balanced. That's what they show. And I think I showed you some of those charts where your gut microbiome is balanced before and after, like, before treatment and after treatment. Like you're off the charts unbalanced. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah. So for those who, if you do want to see what Eric is holding up, you can always watch the YouTube version because he's holding up some charts.
I can give you lots of references on this. So yeah, just showing that, it's not like a cause and effect sort of thing. They're just kind of seeing that, okay, before treatment, you were imbalanced with this microbiome, and now you're balanced afterwards. And that's with probiotics. So it's pretty fascinating. And and that's kind of what I found on my own, and they found it with, a clinical trial, peer reviewed, in an American Dermatology Journal for the first time. So
that's very, very cool. And it's great that, this information is starting to get out there and become more aware for everyone. Mm-hmm. So a quick question about probiotics and maybe even your probiotic. But, some probiotics need to be in the fridge, some don't. Like, how does that work? And does it still stay shelf stable?
So for ours, it's very specific that you should keep them cool in a dry place. You don't have to refrigerate them. But you could, optimally, you would put them in the refrigerator. Sure, you could, because that's a cool, dry place. But they can just stay in the cabinet if it's cool.
Okay, and is it?
An interesting thing to add to that is like some of these probiotics that I've investigated, they're heat killed, so they still keep their functionality after they die.
Oh, interesting.
Pretty fascinating, yeah.
That's very, very interesting.
I've investigated all of these probiotics for skin, and I've seen a lot of different studies, and I can even share those products with you too. They're not typically available in the United States, not the ones that are backed by any science. The ones that are backed, that have some published science behind them are in, like South Korea and in Italy and in Europe and because I tried to source them all. I was like, oh, what's going on? Can we bring this to the United States, put this in our all-star blend? And then for one reason or another, it's like, the science doesn't really match up. How are we going to do this? We couldn't do this as lay persons. So that's why we went and got the experts, and they were like, oh, scientists have been studying this for 10 years, and they just publish in a major American dermatology journal. So you can put these together and, share it with the world. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing.
Just curious, is there a reason why like all those, the all-star probiotics over there have been studied a lot for skin, but not really like over here?
What is the reason behind that? That's a really good question. Yeah, I don't know.
Because you're like one of the first to actually have it studied on the skin. So even if people do go out and investigate the probiotics that they're buying, like they might not even find like studies. Like
yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, there's papers out there. If you do a little digging, they're all out there. I mean, there's a handful of papers out there that I can even share with you. You can see all the studies that are out there for probiotics for skin. There's not too many. There's very specific strains that have been studied on skin, but the journal might be, in Japan, or it might be in Korea, where you're not really sure. It's not the same as having your strains published in an American dermatology journal.
Yeah, that would be really, really different. So I have a lot of like parents who watch as well and listen to the show because their kids have eczema. So could their kids, could their toddlers, could their babies use your probiotics too?
I recommend with your dermatologist assistants. So if you go and take the study, say here's the study. This was published in an American Dermatology Journal. The strains and the CFUs match what was in the study. Can we work with you and help out our child with this product? That's what I would recommend. Yeah, because the study specifically was done on for age 4 to 17.
Okay, so technically it could be very helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. And what they find with the scientists, one of the studies that I'm aware of is that the gut microbiome is really developing for the first 3 years of life. It's real rocky and it's all over the place, and then it's pretty well established by like the end of year 3. Based on this study that I saw, and then it's you're basically in that enterotype. That's kind of your baseline. It doesn't really, change or fluctuate. You're kind of that enterotype. You can change it a little bit, Bacteroides, Prevotella, sort of at the genus level. But the little, species can pop up and get out of balance because you could have up to 1,000, species up in there, or 300 species. So one of them that keeps coming up that you could research, this fecal bacterium. Especially in atopic dermatitis, I've seen it over and over again. And that, that's like the skin, like these microbes are so interesting. They're like, I think you heard Dr. Aaron say that Staph aureus, it's like in 90% of atopic dermatitis patients. So if you know that, it's like, okay, I have a Staph aureus problem on my skin. And so I need to manage that. Like, how do I do that? And then in my gut, I have a fecal bacterium issue where I'm out of balance. How do I balance that down? So it's like it's multifactorial. You have these things, but we're completely missing that right now. We're not even looking at the microbial aspect of it. So that's like in the future, I think we're going to have a better idea how that works. And one of these, there's a scientist, Gallo at UC San Diego, who found a way to transplant the healthy skin microbiome onto the Staph aureus area of atopic dermatitis patients. But in order to do that, you have to clean it. It has to go through some sort of a process where it's cleaned. A layperson speak here. So he would take the healthy microbes and clean them up and then apply them onto the same patient, from patient to same patient, and the Staph aureus gone.
That's so interesting.
Your eczema is gone. And the FDA, this is the way I read this a year ago, kind of got wind of this, that he was able to do this. And people were like, wow, this is amazing. This is this is it. No, you can't do that because that is technically considered a drug. So once it's considered a drug, then you have to go through all of these really dramatic clinical trials. And it's like 7 years, $25 million, is like a ballpark of what that is. So everybody in this clinical trial that had their eczema reversed based on this was told, sorry, you have to wait, until the drug comes out.
Wow, that's
so there's a lot of good things in the pipeline for balancing out your gut and your skin microbiome.
So very interesting. So, one thing, I took away from our conversation is that the amount, like the number of CFU, colony forming units, doesn't matter. Like there can be 30, there can be 50 billion. That doesn't matter. Right. I think yours only has like 6.
Yeah. So clinical outcomes is what you want to look at. So whatever the CFUs and the strains they use in the clinical study, that is the result of what you're looking for. The 30 billion, 50 billion, 70 billion is marketing. It's just like a diamond ring. When you go to buy a diamond ring, it's about 3 months salary, to buy a diamond ring. Well, that's just marketing. It's just made up. It was 1 month. Again, and then the marketing department at the Diamond's like, no, it's 2 months. Now it's 3 months. So it's kind of the same thing where it's just like 20 billion is better, 30 billion, 50 billion, 70 billion, whatever it is. There are some good probiotics out there that have a lot, billions and billions. VSL number 3 was one of them. And I believe that was for like ulcerative colitis. And there was just a big lawsuit because there too, I don't want to misquote, but I believe they've found deception there because the scientists who came up to it had these very specific strains in it, but then it was changed to a different formula. So he ended up winning like a $4 million lawsuit. So that's kind of interesting, like just like the probiotics world, how important the strain is. The strain and the CFU need to match the clinical study. So strain, CFU, clinical study. That's a probiotic.
Interesting.
If it doesn't match, then if you change that formula, if you change a handful of those strains because they're cheaper to make, they're easier to keep alive, whatever it may be, then you don't have the same clinical outcome. That hasn't been studied. That's something else.
That's very interesting.
And so I don't know of the details of that DSL number 3 study. I know that is a good product. I don't know exactly, so I don't want to misspeak there. But I know there was a lawsuit that he won, and I thought that was the kind of the idea behind it.
I have also heard that when searching for instead of looking at colony forming units, you should be looking at the quality of the strain, and it should be human strains. Is that true?
It all depends because these bacillus that I was telling you, Bacillus coagulans and some of these other ones, they have shown health benefits in clinical studies, as far as I remember. So they have benefits too. But do they have benefits for skin? Or do they have benefits for ulcerative colitis? Or do they have benefits for the immune system? Or do they have benefits for gut barrier function or depression? Or, what is it? What has it been studied on? So it all depends. They can be beneficial. It just depends on the clinical study, what it showed. So it doesn't have to be from a human person like the LGG, and the strains and our probiotic as well.
I have also heard about some yogurt strains coming from rat fecal bacteria. Is that true, or have you heard anything about that?
That I don't know anything about.
That is very interesting.
That would not be good, though. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can say that. Technically, we're like 93% mouse or something. We're pretty close. So, a lot of the mouse studies we're very, very close to mice. Very close, as far as I understand it.
Yeah.
That's how they do a lot of these initial studies. They'll replace the gut microbiome of a mouse, into another mouse, and then they'll be able to determine, like an outcome, based on that. And they found some really fascinating studies on that. Rob Knight had a really famous study on that with obese mice that you could look up. It's really fascinating.
Interesting. One last thing that I want to touch upon actually is, I'm very, I always look at ingredients. I always look at labels. So I'm very, cautious of what goes into supplements. I know a lot of supplements use fillers like magnesium stearate, which lowers the quality of the product. So I know, and I love that yours doesn't add magnesium stearate. I think you told me you had to go an extra step just to get that moved out.
Yeah. We have, skin, we know that this could potentially be a very sensitive audience. People even have issues with rice. We have not as many as far as I know, but the magnesium stearate, we had to go out of our way to get, that's a typical excipient that's, to mix with probiotics, and is an easy way to, keep the flow going, to encapsulate them. So yeah, we had to go out of our way, to change that to a rice blend. And
does it cost a lot more money?
No.
Okay. It's just an extra step.
Well, it all depends if time is money, then yes. Yeah. So I would say yes, it does. Because you have to figure out, how to, recreate that flow that was created with the magnesium stearate that they're typical with all the machinery, everything. So now if you're doing a rice blend in there, now it's a little bit different. It's maybe not quite as flowy and it's more organic. So you have to, figure it out, because it's not the typical, filler that they use. So yeah, it took more time that put us back.
Interesting. But I love that, you put that quality into it, which is great.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to point out and remind the listeners is that I know a lot of people expect a quick fix. They expect the probiotics to work within a few days or a week. And if it doesn't work within a week or two, they say that, it doesn't work at all. But based on your studies that I saw, which is a really cool chart that people can go on your website to see, is that it actually took 3 months for it to reach the optimal benefits to be able to notice a difference.
Right. Yeah. So what I would say is, have the right mindset. Is look, when you get the probiotic, I would say you start taking it once in the morning with a glass of water before your morning routine, and circle on your calendar 45 days out, and then start looking for results. And so it's 45 days, and then to 90 days. That's like 21 out of the 23 participants were at 92% clear or almost clear skin. That's amazing, right? That's incredible. But like you said, it was at 45 days is where you started seeing the separation from the placebo, the sugar pill group.
45 days. That's a month and a half, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, it's not a quick fix, right? And like you had Jennifer Fugo on your show too. She has a really great podcast, and I follow her as well, and a blog. And one of the things that she has is just it's like a mindset, right? It's if you're trying to go down this natural path and trying to do it all on yourself, you really need to have an expert person with you that can have give you an emotional balance, like a dermatologist, but then also project out, if you're new to this kind of situation, it's project out a year, and then 6 months, a year. And then, that's kind of where she saw her real changes. And I hear that over and over again, just online from people, that's kind of the way it goes, where if you're new to this story, where it's okay, I'm short on dietary fiber, so I can try to eat more fruits, vegetables, legumes, that agree with my system, and supplement with probiotics. But it's still going to take, 45 days to get to a point where maybe I'll see some changes. And then 60 days, it starts getting exciting. Okay, I see something. And then 90 days, it's okay, maybe I accomplished something. But then even there, it's still a balance. In my case, if I want to go out, and it's so hard to get, I'm supposed to get 38 grams of dietary fiber a day. It's almost impossible. It's very difficult. But I'm trying. And when I do, I find that I do a lot better, with my own condition. But, 90 days is where you start seeing, really dramatic results. But then, probiotics by nature, they don't colonize the gut. So it's not like you're taking them and these are staying in there. You have to continually take them in order to see the results. They're transitory. So they give the benefits on their way through, which is good. I don't know if I would want to be like colonizing myself with stuff, not yet, but that would be, fecal transplants. That's a little bit different, which, has its own place. But yeah, so you need to continually take them to keep that balance, keep the barrier function, keep the gut microbiome balance. So that's why we did a 90-day return policy. So you can, take with confidence. It's like 45 days, 60 days, you go right at 88 days. You're like, okay, it didn't work because it's not going to work for everybody. So it's like it worked for 92% in this clinical study. That's a big number. So we're hoping that people are in that group. But if they're not, it's just, return it. You could get your whole money back, everything.
Yeah, I love that. You put that guarantee on there for 90 days.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that we went out of our way to do as well, too, because you have to find the right merchants there's only a couple that will do that, for the right audience.
Wow.
So yeah, I think that's a big benefit as well, because you circle 45 days on the calendar, 60 days, 90 days, that's why, if you were in this study, for example, and you just took it for 30 days, you're like, okay, maybe you saw a little something happen, but it took much longer to really, 45, 60 days in there is where the, you have trillions of microbes in there and you're just introducing, 6.3 billion, a day in there. So just constantly doing it every morning, staying very consistent, and then, let the action happen over time. And then, just continue to try to maintain that balance.
That's really cool. One last thing. Do you think, I know some people actually flare up after starting to take probiotics. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that? Some people stop taking it.
I did myself.
Oh, you did yourself, but you just kept taking it.
No, remember? So earlier in the story, I was like a guinea pig on myself, just trying all these probiotics, and I went and did like a normal consumer, went and bought the 90 billion, right?
Oh yeah, that one you flared up. Yeah, I remember that one.
90 billion. I was like, wow, yeah, I flared up. It was crazy. But as luck would have it, that was the weekend that I went to Boston to go to this microbiome conference and meet Alicia Fasano and all these scientists. So I had the flare up. So it ended up working out. That I was able to at least see, like the before and after of my gut microbiome, skin and skin microbiome. So yeah, 100%. So, but that goes back to so that probiotic, it wasn't, I don't even think it could be considered a probiotic technically by definition. It's labeled probiotics. But what was the study? What it didn't even have this the strains listed. It was just a bottle full of species. So what is even in there? Like my earlier example was like it had 29 billion of the bacillus and then window dressing of the rest of the stuff. So what are you even taking if it's not exactly down there? You're like, ugh. It could be beneficial, but it could not be too. It could go either way. So it's like, in order to be a probiotic, it has to be like studied in the clinic and published science. Technically, which is like 1 in 500 probiotics on the market.
I love this. I have learned so much from you. Thank you so much. Are there any last words of advice or even any last tips that you want to give our audience?
Any last tips? Oh, yes. Just please, research dietary fiber. You can go to our blog. I've started a blog and you can get more information on dietary fiber. I would just say, that's what these scientists are finding. So if you're interested in this stuff, you can read a bunch of books. Gut is one of them. That is a really great book. What was the other book?
I think
Justin and Erica Sonnenberg, The Good Gut. I don't know if you heard of that. That's Erica Sonnenberg's book. I Contain Multitudes is another book. Ed Young.
The other good one you told me about was The Missing Microbiome.
Oh, Missing Microbes, Dr. Blazer.
Yeah, that one.
His wife is the one who does a lot of the C-section studies. Missing Microbes by Dr. Blazer is a good one. How Not to Die is a great book. Dr. Greger. Dr. Greger is also a great website to go check out, nutritionfacts.org. Carnivores do not like that site.
He has a lot of great information.
Yeah, he has great information. Another great book is Tom O'Brien's Autoimmune Fix, which I love. Just lots of insights and little bits and pieces of just like the complexity of it all. But then like just, and also an understanding of like your overall health and where we're coming from, and like how important dietary fiber is. That's what your gut microbiome eats. And then they produce, short chain fatty acids, this butyrate. And, based on, eating this, dietary fiber, it's for them. Like humans don't even have like the enzymes to break down dietary fiber. So it's like this newly discovered organ, you have to feed it. And one of the things that you'll see in the ebook too is the way Dr. Fasano describes it. Oh, he's great too. So if you go to YouTube and look up Dr. Alicio Fasano, he's got like 5 lectures that will just blow your mind. He'll be able to explain this much better than I am. He's an expert. But that will definitely help you in a big way just to get an understanding, because you have the 5 pillars of chronic inflammation. You have to balance them every day. So it's important to like really understand that. So I think like all these books, can help you kind of get a better understanding of like just how to try to balance every day. That's really what it is. I think, based on what I've learned, is like doing a better balance, because we're way out of balance. I mean, just go to any like American holiday or look up on any website, like what a city is known for. What food is this city known for? No city in America is known for its vegetables. It's all like a big meat plate. And every single, 4th of July or Thanksgiving or whatever it is, it's just, barbecues. And barbecues are great. I love meat. I have nothing against meat. But it's like we're not getting the fiber anymore. It's like gone. It's completely gone. If you have a son who's like 2 or 3, they don't like vegetables to start with. So it's like you really have to like press and like what I recommend. So like I guess my last recommendation is just to be aware of that, how much you're missing. So just keep track for 3 days, like every meal, just for 3 days in a row, like how much fiber in grams you're getting. So Men 38 Grams Institute of Medicine recommends. It's a nonprofit group. And nobody's really selling dietary fiber. Eat more fruits and vegetables and legumes. Everything is kind of the opposite of that right now. So it's really scary. But yeah, just try to keep of it. And for 3 days, Dr. Greger actually has an app that you can keep track at nutritionfacts.org. Just keep track of like, nuts and legumes and fruits and vegetables and, trying to get, all of them. But if you're a woman, 25 grams a day, just keep track for 3 days and see if you're at 25 grams a day. And I also have a link in my blog too of, I think it's the Mayo Clinic goes through and tells you, how much in grams, how much fiber is in each food. So you can see, because I try to have like steel cut oats for breakfast with little blueberries, and that might, depending on how many blueberries you have, that's like 5 grams of fiber. Like, oh, I'm eating healthy, right? And then for lunch, I'll have like a salad, with some tomatoes or something. That might be 2 grams only. And maybe if I have some strawberries, then I'm at like 10 grams. And then for dinner, if I have like chicken and rice, that's pretty healthy. I'm like at 15 grams, but like the whole day, hey, very healthy. It seems like I'm healthy, right? But I'm not getting 38 grams like they're recommending, which is a whole bunch of, fruits and vegetables. So I try to do like blended smoothies, not just the juice, but blended smoothies. I got the triple berry blend. I'll just like a general rule is just add fiber into everything you try to eat. That's kind of the secret. If you want to have a big steak, great. But, have some fiber during the day or the next day to try to balance it out, because we're way out of balance.
I love that. That's such a great tip. And I also, I personally use Chronometer, and that's a really great way to track your fiber, also all your nutritional targets and nutrients every day. So that's a really good way. I know other fitness apps do too. Like I think my Fitness Pal has one as well. But I'll definitely check out the one you mentioned from Dr. Greger.
Oh, and one more tip too is that like stress too is like, I think, based on what I've learned, like supersedes all of this. So, if you're just like a low level inflammation, you just want to pour gasoline on it. It's just like stress will, take you, and blow all this up.
Oh,
so you have to have
adding fire to fire.
An expert. Yeah. You have like an emotional expert with you, or, somebody that can, go on a journey with you if it's a journey, and kind of, support you. But also, doing, replacing all of these like, negative things that, the C-sections and the poisons in the environment. Also, replace that with, like meditation and yoga and dietary fiber and smoothies and, just kind of trying to get, over to the healthier overall lifestyle.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that is such a great idea. Thank you for that. Lastly, if our viewers want to find you or get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Skinesa.com.
Awesome. And that's SKINESA.com.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Eric. It was so great to have you on the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
And just a quick reminder that if you do want Eric's free ebook, just head over to skinesa.com/AbbiePodcast.
Thanks for listening to the Eczema Podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass it along to your friends. Visit eczemaconquerors.com for more articles and tips. Thanks for listening.